The first gift my husband gave me was a lie. It was a small, hand-carved wooden bird, meant to be a hummingbird. He'd said, bought from an old artisan during a trip to Costa Rica he'd never taken. I found the receipt from a downtown Chicago gift shop, stuffed in a winter coat pocket months later, dated 2 days before he gave it to me. I never mentioned it. At the time, I told myself it was a harmless embellishment, a romantic flourish from a man who wanted his life story to be as captivating as his smile. Now, I see it for what it was. Practice. The last gift was a single, perfect white feather left on my pillow. A calling card I wouldn't understand until it was almost too late. That Sunday morning, the feather was the first thing I saw when I woke, catching the pale dawn light filtering through the blinds. The other side of the bed was cold, the sheets unnervingly smooth. Julian was gone. A familiar emptiness echoed in the quiet of our Lincoln Park brownstone. But this time it was different. It felt final, absolute. My feet were silent on the cold hardwood floors as I walked downstairs, a hollow feeling growing in my chest. Propped against the gleaming espresso machine was the note. Not a goodbye, not an explanation. Just 5 carelessly scrawled words on a torn piece of legal paper. I never loved you. Anyway, my hand didn't shake as I picked it up. A strange, cold calm washed over me. The same professional detachment I felt when opening a new case file. I remembered our last anniversary. Just 4 months ago. At a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city lights. He'd raised his glass, his eyes full of what I had mistaken for love. To us, helada, he'd said, his voice a low, sincere murmur, to a future built on unbreakable trust. The memory, once a source of warmth, now felt like acid in my veins. The trust wasn't just broken, it had never existed at all. My name is Alara Vance, and for the past 15 years, I've worked as a forensic accountant for the top firms in Chicago. I don't just follow the money. I trace the ghost trails of intent left by criminals who believe their own brilliance makes them invisible. I find the digital breadcrumbs they leave behind in shell corporations, offshore accounts, and falsified ledgers. The men I hunt are often charming, always arrogant, and utterly convinced of their superiority. They build worlds out of lies. Julian, it turned out, was no different. So when my own husband began meticulously planning his grand exit, he wasn't just dealing with a heartbroken wife. He was dealing with an expert in the very art he was trying to practice. The signs had been classic, almost textbook. First, the sudden, intense interest in our finances. Julian, who'd always waved a dismissive hand at any talk of retirement funds. That's your world. Helada, you're the genius, began asking pointed questions about liquidity, access codes, and transfer limits. Then came the hushed phone calls he'd take on the balcony, the screen of his laptop that would snap shut the moment I entered his study. The first true piece of the puzzle, however, wasn't a transaction, but a file ghost in our shared cloud drive. A preliminary divorce filing, dated 3 months ago, drafted by a cut-rate online legal service. He was planning to leave me while he was still kissing me goodnight. He thought he was so clever. What Julian never understood was that my mind is trained to see patterns in chaos. The day after I found that file, I began my own quiet work. Every time he made a stealthy transfer from our joint savings to a new, hidden account, a silent alert pinged on a private server I'd set up in my home office. Every burner phone purchase, every prepaid credit card, was logged. He thought he was slowly and invisibly bleeding our life savings dry. But all he was doing was handing me the rope. Foot by agonizing foot. I documented everything. Screenshots of his encrypted ledgers ironically kept on a modified version of a secure accounting software I had designed for a client years ago. The irony was a bitter pill. Each piece of evidence was copied, encrypted, and sent to a secure cloud drive accessible only by myself and my lawyer. By the time he left that cruel little note, thinking he was orchestrating the perfect vanishing act, I had already executed my own intricate plan. Our real assets had been moved into a series of unassailable trusts under my maiden name weeks ago. The accounts he was targeting were now little more than digital mirages. Honeypots carefully maintained with just enough funds to seem active. Each one flagged with multi-layered fraud alerts that would trigger a complete lockdown the moment any significant withdrawal was attempted. He was walking into a financial labyrinth of my own design, and he was about to hit every single dead end. I was rereading the note when my colleague, Maya, called, her voice tight with urgency. "Ilara, you need to see this." I was doing a final cross-reference on the North Star Holdings case, and a name popped up. "It's Julian." My breath caught. North Star was a massive Ponzi scheme investigation. "What about him?" I asked, my voice betraying nothing. "He's not a victim," Maya said, a sense of disbelief in her tone. "He's listed as a person of interest. He's connected to a series of wire transfers we flagged last year. Different name, Julian Croft here, but he was using the alias Alex Miller then. The transfer patterns, Ilara, they're identical to the ones I've seen in other romance fraud cases." My stomach turned to ice. It was never just about me. "There's more," she whispered. "The file links him to another investigation. A missing persons and fraud case out of Phoenix 3 years ago. A woman named Sophia Rossi. Her husband disappeared with her entire life savings. His name was Julian Croft." "Ilara, are you okay?" Maya's voice was laced with concern. "I'm fine." I lied, the words tasting like ash. "Send me the complete file. Encrypted. I'm opening a new case." The pieces of my life slotted into place with a sickening click. The charm, the vague backstory, the carefully curated image. I wasn't his wife. I was his next mark. And he had no idea his latest target was the one person who could dismantle his entire world. I laughed then, a sharp, humorless sound that echoed in the empty kitchen. The sheer, breathtaking irony of it all. He had chosen the one woman he should have run from. For 3 weeks, I had lived a perfect lie, kissing him goodbye in the morning, listening to his fabricated stories at night, all while building an unshakable case against him. The trap was set. Now, all I had to do was wait for him to realize he was caught. The encrypted file from Maya arrived minutes later. I locked my office door, the click of the bolt echoing the sound of a door slamming shut on my old life. For hours, I sat in the glow of my monitors, cross-referencing timelines, financial statements, and aliases. The digital paper trail Julian had left behind was both arrogant and amateurish. He used the same 4-digit PIN for multiple accounts, recycled passwords, and left metadata on photos that placed him in cities he claimed never to have visited. It was sloppy, but as I tried to decrypt a crucial ledger file that connected his Alex Miller alias to the North Star scheme, a string of red text flashed across my screen. "Corruption detected. File unreadable." A jolt of frustration, cold and sharp, went through me. It was the linchpin, the one piece of hard digital evidence that legally tied his Chicago persona to his criminal past. Without it, a good lawyer could argue the connection was circumstantial. For a moment, a sliver of panic wedged its way into my cold resolve. My perfect, meticulous plan had a flaw. I stared at the corrupted file, then at the photo of Sophia Rossi in the Phoenix PD report. She looked like me, professional, confident, smiling. I realized then that a digital trail wasn't enough. I needed the human story. I needed to hear it from someone else who had looked into his eyes and believed the beautiful lies. Finding her was easy. Sophia Rossi was now Sophia Evans, and she ran a successful graphic design firm in Scottsdale. My hands felt unsteady as I dialed her number, my carefully constructed professional calm threatening to crumble. What would I say? How do you begin a conversation like that? She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and professional. "Sophia Evans speaking." I took a breath. "My name is Ilara Vance. I'm calling from Chicago. I believe we have something in common, a man named Julian Croft." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy, thick with 3 years of pain and anger. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and dangerous. "I don't know who you are. But you should never say that name to me again. She was about to hang up. He's my husband, I said quickly, the words tasting like poison. He's here. With me. And I know everything. That stopped her. I spent the next hour on the phone with a ghost. A woman who was living the future I had just narrowly avoided. We compared notes. And the similarities were chilling. The charming investment advisor story. The initial years of seeming bliss. The sudden financial secrecy. The slow, methodical draining of accounts before a sudden disappearance. He used to bring me white roses, Sophia said, her voice hollow, every Friday. Said they were for my purity. After he was gone, I found out he was using our savings to pay for weekend trips to Vegas with another woman. She'd lost her house, her business, everything. It had taken her 3 years to rebuild. I have a box, she said finally, her voice hardening with a new resolve. Every letter, every card, every photo, evidence. I just never had a way to use it. We had a way now. The corrupted file no longer mattered. I had a witness. That evening, Julian came home carrying a bouquet of lilies. My favorite. He wrapped his arms around me from behind as I stood at the stove, the scent of the flowers mingling with the aroma of the dinner I was pretending to cook for him. Tough day at the office, he murmured into my hair, his voice a perfect imitation of concern. I leaned back into him, my body playing the part of a loving wife, while my mind catalogued his lies. You know how it gets? I replied. He pulled away and looked at me, his expression uncharacteristically serious. Sometimes, he said quietly, his gaze distant. I wonder if this is the life I deserve. For a single, stunning second, his mask slipped. I saw a flicker of something real in his eyes, weariness, maybe even a trace of guilt. My heart gave a painful lurch. It was a glimpse of the man I thought I had married. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. He broke into his easy, charming grin. I'm just so lucky to have you. Elada. Way out of my league. A small, guilty part of me felt a pang for the trap I was setting, for the man he might have been. But the thought was fleeting. He had made his choices. Now he had to face mine. My final piece of the puzzle fell into place 2 nights later. He was on another one of his hushed phone calls on the balcony. I activated the audio feed from the micro recorder. It wasn't a secret lover or a bookie. He was talking to Isabel Sterling, a brilliant, ruthless hedge fund manager from our country club, and, more importantly, one of my closest friends. He was laying the groundwork, feeding her the same lines he'd fed me, the same lines he'd fed Sophia. The next day, I met Isabel for lunch. I laid out the entire story, my hands flat on the table to keep them from shaking. She listened without saying a word, her sharp eyes missing nothing. When I was finished, she didn't offer sympathy. She offered a weapon. The club's annual gala is next week, she said, her voice cold as steel. He's been trying to get me to go with him for weeks. I'll go, and I'll be wearing a wire. The last 2 weeks before Julian disappeared were a blur of clandestine activity. Sophia overnighted me her box of evidence, old bank statements that showed his spending patterns, letters with his distinctive handwriting, a photo of him with his cousin Chloe, a woman I now suspected was his accomplice. Isabel forwarded me recordings from their dates. On them, Julian, trying to impress her, boasted about his ability to move money discreetly, unknowingly detailing the exact methods of his Ponzi scheme. I was the hub of the wheel, collecting every piece of the puzzle, building a timeline, creating a case file so detailed, so ironclad, that no lawyer on earth could dismantle it. The woman who had started this journey feeling broken and alone was now the commander of a small, formidable army. The morning after Julian disappeared, my phone began to buzz. And it didn't stop. It was the symphony I had been waiting for. A cascading series of fraud alerts. Each one a perfectly executed note in my composition. Declined transaction, $20. 000 withdrawal attempt on account ending in 4,825. Buzz. Alert: unusual activity flagged. Account frozen. Buzz. Failed wire transfer $50. 000 to an unverified international account. Buzz. Each notification was music, a testament to the digital fortress I had built. He was hitting every wall, just as I'd planned. As I sipped my coffee, watching the alerts roll in, a text message illuminated the screen. It was from Julian. "I'm so sorry. I've made a terrible mistake. I panicked. Can we please talk just one last time?" It was almost verbatim what Sophia had warned me he would do. The feigned remorse. The plea for one last chance to manipulate, to access any funds he might have missed. He was following his script to the letter. My fingers were steady as I typed my reply, coordinating with the FBI agent who was now my primary contact. Okay. The coffee shop on Monroe. 1 hour. The coffee shop was buzzing with the morning rush. The air thick, with the smell of roasted beans and steamed milk. To the casual observer, it was just another busy Chicago cafe. To me, it was a stage. The man reading a newspaper in the corner was Agent Davies. The two women chatting near the window were Agents Chen and Rodriguez. A surveillance van was parked across the street, its tinted windows reflecting the bustling city. Despite the overwhelming federal presence, a knot of something cold and tight formed in my stomach. This was no longer about data and ledgers. This was real. He was already there, sitting at a small table in the back. He'd perfected the look. His hair was artfully disheveled. His eyes were red-rimmed, and he wore a crumpled shirt, the picture of a man on the edge of a breakdown. He looked up as I approached, his face a mask of anguish. "Ilara," he began, his voice cracking as he reached for my hand. I let him take it. His skin was cold and clammy. "Thank you for coming. I've been going through some things. Some bad investments went south. I got in over my head with some dangerous people. I just panicked." He squeezed my hand. "I was going to pay it all back. I promise." I played my part, letting a look of concern soften my features. "How much trouble are you in?" "Julian." A flicker of relief crossed his face, so faint that anyone else would have missed it. He thought I was falling for it. "It's bad. About $200. Ling ling ling. But I have a plan to fix it," he said, leaning in conspiratorially. "I just need you to grant me access to our emergency fund. Just for a few days. I can make it right." "The emergency fund," I repeated, my voice flat. I slowly pulled my hand from his grasp. "Right. The one you tried to empty from 3 different IP addresses this morning." The color drained from his face. For a moment, the mask of the remorseful husband vanished, replaced by the cold, calculating eyes of a cornered animal. That was a mistake," he stammered, trying to recover. I wasn't thinking clearly. "Or," I continued, my voice dropping to a near whisper as I slid a thin folder across the table. "Maybe you needed it for someone else." He stared at the folder, confused. I tapped the cover. "Open it." He hesitated, then flipped it open. The first thing he saw was not a bank statement, but a glossy 8x10 photo of a smiling, dark-haired woman. "Her name is Sophia Rossi," I said, my voice cutting through the cafe's ambient noise. "She lived in Phoenix. You probably remember her. You took her life savings, too." He stared at the photo, then back at me, his mouth opening and closing silently. He was utterly, completely shocked. He truly believed he was smarter than all of his victims. "And Isabel Sterling says hello. By the way," I added, twisting the knife. "She said you were very forthcoming at the gala. We have it all on tape." Julian. The Ponzi scheme. The offshore accounts. Every single lie. For the first time since I'd met him, Julian Croft, or Alex Miller, or whatever his real name was, looked genuinely terrified. He had been outplayed at his own game. "You should have done your research," I said, standing up and straightening my jacket as Agent Davies and Agent Chen approached our table. Stealing from a forensic accountant was never going to end well for you. Julian didn't even resist as they cuffed him and read him his rights. I watched them lead him out. A profound sense of relief washing over me. It was over. I had won. My phone buzzed in my hand. I smiled, expecting a congratulatory call from Maya, but it was an unknown number. A picture message. My blood turned to ice. It was a photo of my parents' quiet suburban house, taken from across the street. A timestamp in the corner showed it had been taken 20 minutes ago. Below the photo, a single line of text. This isn't over. We know where they live. The victory in the coffee shop turned to ash in my mouth. The knot of anxiety in my stomach was back, colder and tighter than before. This wasn't just about money. It was about a network, about dangerous people that, for once, Julian hadn't been lying about. The trap I had set for him had just sprung another one on me. I forwarded the threatening message to Agent Davies without a word. The response was immediate. A patrol car was dispatched to my parents' house, and a protection detail assigned. But the fear didn't subside. It was a cold, coiling thing in my gut. My neat, orderly world of numbers and logic had been invaded by the chaotic, unpredictable threat of physical violence. I had planned for every financial contingency, every legal maneuver. I hadn't adequately planned for this. Agent Davies called me a few minutes later, his voice grim. We're tracking the burner phone. We've identified your sender as Marcus Thorne, a known associate of Croft's. He's ex-military, hired muscle. He has a history of witness intimidation. He paused. And Julian's cousin, Chloe, the one from Sophia's photo, she's not his cousin. She's his primary accomplice. In charge of logistics and cleanup. She just dropped off the grid. We think they're working together. As Davies spoke, a sudden, horrifying thought struck me. My home office, my primary server, with its terabytes of case data, including unencrypted copies of my research. I'd been so focused on the honeypot accounts that I had overlooked the most vulnerable target, Agent Davies. I said, my voice tight. They're not going after my family. They're going after the data. They're going to my house. We have a team 5 minutes out, he assured me. But 5 minutes felt like an eternity. I pictured them wiping my server, destroying the intricate case I had spent months building. But then, I remembered something else. The second trap, after the file corruption scare. I'd learned my lesson about relying on a single point of failure. The entire home was under live surveillance, with every keystroke on my office computer being live-streamed directly to a secure FBI server. And I had left a backdoor open in my system, a tempting, seemingly unprotected access point that led directly to a sandboxed mirror of my hard drive. It was another honeypot, designed to trap a hacker. I just never expected the hackers to be physically in my house. I called Isabel, my heart pounding. She was my emergency contact, the only one who had a key and lived close by. Isabel, are you near my house? Just pulling up, she said, her voice calm as ever. I had a feeling you might need a plan B. The front door is unlocked. What am I walking into? Chloe and Marcus. I said, they're inside. They're trying to wipe my server. Stall them. I need 2 minutes. Through the open line, I heard the sound of my front door opening. I heard Isabel's cool, confident voice. Well, this is a surprise. I must have the wrong day. Julian told me he wanted me to meet his cousin Chloe this afternoon. You must be her. There was a startled silence. I could almost hear Chloe's mind racing, trying to figure out if this was a trick. Isabel was brilliant, using the very lies of Julian's next con to disarm his accomplice. I heard a man's gruff voice Marcus say, "Who the hell are you?" "I'm Isabel," she said smoothly. "Julian's friend, and you must be the help." Julian never mentioned he had staff. While Isabel worked her magic, buying me precious seconds, I was on my laptop, initiating the final phase of my plan. I triggered a remote lockdown of my entire system. but not before activating a program that would flash a single, tantalizing file on the screen of my office computer: offshore accounts, final, XLSX. It was the ultimate bait. I heard Chloe's sharp intake of breath over the phone. "Marcus, get in here. It's right here." I smiled. They took the bait. The moment they clicked to download the file, they weren't downloading a spreadsheet. They were executing a program that would instantly ping their exact location, activate my home's internal cameras and microphones to record them, and lock every door and window in the house. "It's done," I whispered to Isabel. "Look outside." The distant sound of sirens began to grow louder over the phone. I heard Marcus curse, followed by the sound of a crash as he likely tried to break a window. It was too late. My home, my sanctuary that they had violated, had just become their prison. Within minutes, both Chloe and Marcus were in custody, and Isabel was safe. The attempted break-in, the threats, the attempt to destroy evidence, it was all documented, all recorded. Julian's desperate final move had just handed us everything we needed to add witness intimidation, conspiracy, and a dozen other charges to his indictment. 2 months later, I sat in the front row of the courtroom, watching Julian's world crumble. The charming smile was gone, replaced by a look of hollow defeat. The judge read out the sentence in a clear, unwavering voice. For multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and witness intimidation, this court sentences you to 25 years in federal prison. As they led him away, his eyes met mine. For a moment, his mask slipped completely, and I saw the terrified man underneath. The man who had tried to break me with 5 cruel words now faced a future where that kind of casual cruelty was a luxury he would never again afford. After the sentencing, Agent Davies approached me. "Your network of victims was the key," he said. "They were willing to testify because you gave them a voice. The Bureau could use someone with your skills. Ilara, have you ever considered consulting?" I thought of Sophia, Isabel, and the dozen other women whose lives Julian had shattered. I thought of all the other Julians still out there, hiding behind charming smiles. "You know what?" I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face for the first time in months. "I think I'd like that." Walking out of the courthouse into the bright Chicago sunshine, I felt lighter than I had in years. Julian thought he was the architect of my destruction. He had no idea he was the architect of my rebirth. He created a network of victims, but I had turned them into a network of survivors. And we were just getting started. If you've ever felt betrayed or lost, know that you are not alone. There is strength in numbers, and there is power in telling your story. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking and sharing it. Subscribe for more stories of justice and survival, and leave a comment below to share your own experiences. Your voice matters,